Pushkin. Hey, this is Jake. Just a quick note. You're about to listen to episode 4, but this is a 6-part series. So if you haven't heard the earlier episodes, I encourage you, hit pause, go back and listen to them. You'll get a lot more out of the whole story. Also, you can hear more ad-free episodes from this season of Deep Cover before they're released to the public by signing up for Pushkin Plus. You also get bonus episodes, full audiobooks, and binges from your favorite Pushkin hosts and authors. Find Pushkin Plus on the Deep Cover show page on Apple Podcasts or at pushkin.fm/plus. All right, let's get into it. Just a heads up, in this episode, there's a reference to suicidal ideation.
Previously on Deep Cover.
Veterans look out for each other. And I'm not going to sit here and let what I thought at the time was a fellow veteran, die from lack of treatment.
I was like, oh my God, you basically stole money. And I said to her, you're going to go to jail, Sarah. And she's like, you think?
Dave told me hey, she's fake. She's not a veteran. And I was just in shock and trying to just wrap my brain around it.
I don't think it's ever going to be easy to think about the people I hurt. And because these are people that even before they knew I hurt them, right? I was hurting them, right? Because I was lying to them.
If there was one single person who really put Sarah on the map in a very public way, well, it'd be this woman right here.
So my name is Kate Mannion, and I am a co-host of a podcast at Barstool Sports called Zero Blog 30. Barstool Sports, where I work, we're a media company, and I say this with love, we're probably the lowest brow media company. If you're coming to us for your exact factoids and opinions on stuff, you might be wrong.
Kate is one of the very first people we reached out to when we started reporting this season. I sent her a message using my work email from the university where I teach.
I'm like, oh, a Yale email address. My mind was blown. I was like, what could this possibly be about for me? It's got to be something to do with butts or something. Because that's more the beat I cover.
Jake asking the deep questions.
That's amazing. That's your beat is the buttocks beat.
But way before she got busy on the buttocks beat, Kate had served in the military.
I was a senior in college with a 1.8 GPA. Going into winter break, just didn't show up for any of my finals. The school was like, you're done. You got to get out of here. And I was like, oh, crap. My parents are going to be pissed. And I needed a plan B. I was like a recruiter's dream. I walked into the recruiting office and I knew I wanted the hardest branch. I was like, I need the biggest kick in the ass ever. Walked into the Marine Corps. I was like, 1 ticket to Marine Corps, please.
All told, Kate served about 5 years, including 2 tours in Afghanistan. After getting out, she found her way into podcasting at Barstool Sports. She hosted that show called Zero Blog 30, all about life in the military.
Basically, we go over what's happening in the military, spill the tea a little bit about some gossip, and try to support each other.
If you've listened to her show, you've heard Kate and her co-hosts trying to help other veterans however they can, often plugging veteran charities. Kate's a big supporter of a charity called Hunter 7.
You might remember Sarah's friend Dex had actually submitted Sarah to Hunter 7 to get help paying her medical bills. And this Hunter 7 connection, this is how Kate first learns about Sarah's story.
I am scrolling through the Hunter 7 social media, and I see them post about this Marine veteran, Sarah Cavanaugh.
Hunter 7 has something called an immediate needs program. It's for veterans who struggle to pay medical bills and have illnesses connected to their service. They, or someone on their behalf, can submit a request. And that's what Dex had done for Sarah, submitted her application. And now Hunter 7 was publicizing Sarah's tragic story online.
They were sharing her story of her diagnosis, and I remember like sobbing as I read her story. I was so blown away by it. It was like 8 pages long on their Instagram story, and she gave them details like there was a 5-centimeter long nodule. It's in her femur, her ribs, her scapula, thoracic spine, and now there's lesions on her brain. Like the medical lingo that went into this was so detailed.
The post also mentioned that Sarah's CT scan showed metallic particles in her lungs, something often linked to IED blasts.
And I was like, oh my God, this cancer is related directly to her time in service, to so many things that myself and my friends were exposed to things like this. And so I guess you see yourself mirrored in somebody and you see them going through a nightmare scenario and you're like, holy shit, that could be me. How can I help?
Kate does everything she can to spread the word. She donates herself, but she also posts on her social media account, trying to rally as many people as she can to help Sarah. And then, at some point, she gets a call from the woman who's the director of Hunter 7.
When she reached out to me, it was like, I have some crazy news for you.
That's when Kate learned that all of those details about Sarah's medical condition, like the 5-centimeter long nodule in her lungs, appeared to be made up or stolen, and that Sarah wasn't who she claimed to be.
I remember the heartbreak I felt, and I just like, my heart dropped into my butt. It was like, I couldn't, to put it eloquently, I like could not believe it. And I didn't want it to be true.
Shortly after this, Kate goes public on her podcast. Here's a clip from that episode where she's talking to her co-hosts about what happened.
The feeling was so gross. Like I didn't donate a ton of money, but I donated, it was like $100. But I like my emotions, my time, like posting all this stuff. I was genuinely moved by her story.
Kate goes on like this, venting about the mess Sarah's caused. She says that this whole scandal will only scare people away from donating to veterans' charities, leaving less help for those who really need it. She told her co-hosts this would just make it way harder for real women combat vets to get the respect they deserve, which really pissed Kate off.
Holy shit, this story is, I'm sure more is going to come out about it. I'm interested to see. But anyway, NCIS, FBI, the VA, like all these different organizations now are coming after her.
Kate was more right than she knew. Law enforcement officials had already started investigating Sarah Cavanaugh on the down low, trying to keep it quiet. And now, Kate's podcast would put pressure on investigators to go into overdrive. Over many years, Sarah had built a house of lies. The people she deceived lived in separate, shuttered rooms, hidden from one another. But now, the foundation was cracking, as were the walls, and the truth was seeping in, piercing in its brightness, as her carefully built world came undone. I'm Jake Halpern.
And I'm Jess McHugh.
And this is Deep Cover Season 6, The Truth About Sarah. Episode 4, The Suspect.
We have to talk about this Instagram post for a second. The one that Hunter 7 shared about Sarah Cavanaugh. This is the post that Kate saw, the one that brought her to tears. This post had all the details of Sarah's supposed injuries and a photo of her in her uniform. Well, a lot of people saw and shared this post. And as it made the rounds, people started commenting, saying something looked off about her uniform. For one thing, she was wearing out-of-regulation earrings. And also, upon closer inspection, it looked like her eagle, globe, and anchor insignia were backwards. The folks at Hunter 7 started getting suspicious. So they called the VA to verify Sarah's service record. The folks at the VA do a quick check in their database. Sarah's not in it. At least, not as a veteran. And this hot mess, it all lands on the desk of a guy named Tom Donnelly.
The chief of VA police in Rhode Island called me and said, hey, I think we might have a problem with an employee.
That's Donnelly. He's an investigator with the Department of Veterans Affairs. Basically, he's an in-house detective for the VA's Office of Inspector General, looking into fraud and other sketchy business, which is why he was the one to get this call about Sarah Cavanaugh, a VA social worker who had apparently gone rogue.
Now, Donnelly is looking at more than just a scammer. He's got someone working the system from the inside, like a mole in his own ranks. So he opens an investigation, and he's just a few days into it when Kate's podcast comes out on Barstool.
So our concern is that we don't know the extent of it yet. Like, we don't know all the evidence that there is, which opens the avenue for her to potentially destroy evidence or cover her tracks a little bit or try to talk to witnesses and get them to not cooperate.
But here was the good news for Donnelly. Right from the start, he had some incriminating evidence, an important set of documents. These documents, they all came from Hunter 7, the charity. They were actually documents that Sarah herself had submitted to bolster her lies, to support her false claims of being a veteran and a cancer patient. These records would help Donnelly do two really important things. First, they'd help him get a warrant to search Sarah's house. Second, like a trail of breadcrumbs, they'd lead him right to the doorstep of several people Sarah had deceived. And this, in turn, would spark some pretty tough conversations. We'll get to the search warrant in a bit, but first, we want to tell you about those conversations. Donnelly contacted Justin, Sarah's friend from the VFW. He was the one battling stage 4 lung cancer. At this point, Justin had heard the rumors about Sarah being a fraud, but there was still so much that he didn't know. Donnelly arranged for them to meet at the naval base in Newport, Rhode Island. Justin recalls that they gathered in an old conference room, a forgotten, run-down, beat-up place. Old furniture was stacked haphazardly, like it had been cleared out for some event and never put back. Looking around the room, Justin saw agents from a number of federal agencies.
I had NCIS, I think FBI and VA investigators, I sat down with them all at the same time. They were extremely sympathetic, first of all. I mean, they were visibly upset. But they just kind of laid it out and they said, look, this is what we think she did.
They explained how they'd put together the pieces. One of Donnelly's colleagues had noticed something interesting about Sarah's medical records from Hunter 7.
There's this rare procedure in the medical notes. It's got a date on it. The Providence VA only did that procedure to one person on that day.
And that person was Justin. When investigators compared the two sets of medical records, Sarah's and Justin's looked pretty much identical. Justin's doctor had even made a few typos, and those exact same typos were in Sarah's records. It was a cut and paste job.
What immediately occurred to me was that as soon as I told her I had cancer, even though she was telling me it was okay, in her back of her mind, she was thinking, I can take advantage of this.
You might recall from our last episode, Justin had given Sarah money, supposedly so she could pay for her own cancer treatment. Sarah had taken this money under false pretenses. But as Donnelly had discovered, she'd also done something far more devious. Using her privileges as a social worker at the Providence VA, Sarah had accessed Justin's medical records. She'd stolen them, doctored them, and passed them off as her own.
I just couldn't wrap my head around what kind of person would do that to another person that was, especially that was, you knew was sick, that was getting treatment, that was, dying. And you're going to take advantage of that person with no reservations whatsoever. I thought about it for a very long time after that. I couldn't stop thinking about how much I was violated by that.
Justin laid out his side of the story for investigators, how he'd given Sarah thousands of dollars for her treatment. Justin was able to provide them with very specific evidence, dates, amounts, and transaction records for every electronic transfer, all of which would be helpful to Donnelly's investigation.
One of the other documents that Donnelly had gotten from Hunter 7 was a set of medical bills. These bills were from Dana-Farber, a cancer hospital in Boston. The bills looked real. So if they weren't Sarah's, whose were they? Donnelly and his colleagues slowly pieced together where the bills had come from. And this trail of clues would eventually lead them to a physical therapy clinic outside of Providence. And that clinic, it belonged to Sam. Sam was Sarah's physical therapist. They become friends, and then much more than that. Sarah had become a fixture in Sam's life. She'd even helped out when Sam's mom was ill. Donnelly, along with a few other federal agents, just showed up at Sam's PT clinic one day with a subpoena and some questions.
And I was like, well, where do you want to have this meeting? I will not have it in my practice because I had no private room. I said, I will not have it at my home. And they'll go, what about a cafe? I said, no. I said, I'm not going to a cafe. I was like, everyone knows me in this town. No, absolutely not. So we basically had the interview in their car. Donnelly was sitting in the front, turned like this the entire time. And there was another woman who was in the driver's seat, same thing, turned looking at me the entire time.
The feds start talking about Sam's mom, asked if she was in treatment for cancer.
And I said, yeah. And I went into this whole story, like, she was going to Rhode Island, wasn't getting really the care that she needed, so she went to Dana-Farber.
So there's Sam, in the car, in the parking lot at her work, cramped between a bunch of federal agents, wondering what all this could possibly have to do with her mom. That's when investigators asked her,
do you realize that Sarah used a bill, one of your mother's bills from Dana-Farber? And I said, no, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. And I said, that's really disappointing. And that's when I got upset and I started crying.
Just a few weeks earlier, Sam had learned that Sarah had been lying to her for years about nearly everything. But this was different. These documents from Hunter 7, they would be key to Donnelly's investigation. Because even before he sat down with Justin and Sam, they gave him ample evidence of a crime. Those documents would allow him to do something really crucial: get a warrant to search Sarah's house. We'll be right back. Early on the morning of February 3rd, 2022, search warrant in hand, Donnelly set out for Sarah's house.
So we got the paperwork signed, figure out how we're going to approach the house. We all pile into our cars and we drive down Rhode Island.
Donnelly had a couple of his own agents with him, and a couple agents from the FBI.
So we get there and, it's snowing and everyone surrounds the house. Everyone's got their tactical plate carrier vests on. Everyone's all dressed up for the occasion. And we form, a stack of agents to go up and knock on the door. So requirement of a normal search warrant is that you knock, you announce, police search warrant, and then you give a reasonable amount of time for somebody inside to answer the door. So knocking on the door, loudly announcing nobody's coming.
So this crowd of agents is standing there in Sarah's front yard, debating whether they should break in the door. And it's snowing, freezing cold. So what does Donnelly do? Turns out he's got Sarah's cell phone number. He's never actually spoken to her, but he figures, hey, maybe before I bust this door down, I should, give her a ring. Very considerate. You never see that in the police movies, right? Detective gives suspect a courtesy call. But that's what he does. He calls her, and she picks up.
And I said, hey, we are at your house. It's the police. Are you in the house? We need you to come to the door. And she says, no, I went out.
Sarah had slipped out of the house without anyone knowing. Donnelly's not quite sure how.
Oh, she ducked surveillance.
And it wasn't that she was trying to avoid surveillance. I think she was trying to avoid the news, but it had the side effect of avoiding the surveillance. I said, all right, you said you're 15 minutes away. You've got exactly 15 minutes to come back. And if you don't come back, then at that point, we're going to have to force our way into your house.
While they're all waiting on Sarah, an agent notices there's a back window that's unlocked. So he shimmies through it and opens the front door for the rest of the agents. By the time Sarah pulled up, the search was in full swing.
The whole street was blocked off. There was a dozen cars. There's agents everywhere. Evidence bags, evidence tapes.
And Donnelly laid eyes on Sarah for the first time.
So she pulled up, maybe bewildered is the word I would use, just because there's all these people milling about. The FBI people are wearing their plate carriers that say FBI in big letters on them.
So Donnelly tells her, look, you can't be in the house while we search. You can go wait at a friend's or get a coffee at Dunkin', but you can't go in the house. Sarah decides to wait outside.
All right, Thursday, February 3rd, 3:23 p.m. Video walkthrough as we leave the residence.
We got footage of the search through a Freedom of Information Act request.
This video was taken by an officer as he walked through the house. They were looking for Sarah's work phone and any computers, checks from charities, that uniform that she'd been photographed in, any evidence that would corroborate their case. Meanwhile, Sarah was watching agents come in and out of the house. Sarah didn't say much. She just looked dazed, in Donnelly's words.
Maybe if you've ever seen someone immediately after a car accident where they're still trying to process exactly what just happened kind of thing, because it was a big turnout.
According to Sarah, by the time the feds searched her house, she was already in rough shape mentally, exhausted by the stress of all her lies.
I lost a ton of weight. I began to drink extremely heavily, and I kind of lost interest in most other things. I began to just kind of go through the motions of these lies. Okay, just keep going. Something's going to happen. It will end.
For Sarah, the day of the search was kind of surreal.
When they came to search my house, I had been taking some pills to sleep or calm down because I would get up during the night and I would walk around the house and check the windows. And this wasn't because I thought they were coming to search my house or anything. I had no idea about the investigation. But it was just this sense of knowing I was lying and the paranoia that comes from that.
Standing in the snow-covered driveway, Donnelly tried to talk to Sarah.
I had just said, hey, why are we here today? And she had started to tell me about who she borrowed the Marine Corps uniform from that she had worn. And then I think at that point, it really sank in what was happening, because there's agents coming in and out of the house. And then she said, she stopped her story about the uniform. And she just said, I'm not going to talk to you.
I was so afraid, right? I was so afraid. Not because I thought it was illegal, not because I'm thinking I'm going to go to prison, but because I'm like, they are not going to be my friends anymore. I'm not going to have these people in my life.
The team of agents went through the house methodically, placing items in evidence bags.
There were VFW like donation bins in the basement, like the 5-gallon buckets that they put out, like when you're going to the grocery store or something. There was no money in them.
They also found her VFW membership card and VFW polos, mail from the Wounded Warrior Project. And inside a closet in her home office, Donnelly found something else, something very curious, a green-colored notebook.
I used to work in counterintelligence investigations, and she had what, in my opinion, I would call a backstopped identity.
Explain what you mean by that.
Anyone who was ever in the military or worked for the government knows the green record book. It's a notebook. It's ruled paper inside. It's like this 1950s seafoam green. The military's probably used them since World War II. She had one of those, and she wrote a very detailed fake war diary.
That's right. He'd found what looked like a war diary. Sarah, by the way, doesn't remember this at all. But Donnelly told us it included detailed entries from Afghanistan.
And Donnelly found other clues for the character Sarah had been playing, other props for her double life, her backstopped identity. Sarah the Marine, Sarah the hero, like a handmade vase with the Marine Corps insignia. He later discovered Sarah had made it as part of an art therapy trip for veterans. As Sarah waited, her mind went to dark places.
I had to sit outside on the fender of the car in the garage, and there were 2 officers standing on either side of me. And they were, I think, playing good cop, so to speak, right? And there was this man, and he was like an IT guy, and he was thin. He had glasses, kind of like a boyish haircut. And he wasn't like as intense as the other agents. And he had a gun on his holster. And I was like, I could probably get to him fast enough that the other man on the other side will shoot me. And I remember, like, even when they were in my house, that thought consuming me, not even thinking about, like, that they're searching my house and that this is now a criminal investigation, right? Just thinking about, like, letting it end, letting it be over.
Donnelly remembers this moment really clearly, too.
She had said, what would happen to me if I tried to take your gun from you right now? To the agents that were kind of standing there, like, watching her. And they're like, well, like, why would you do that? And so at that point, we were concerned. So we had the local police respond out and said, look, she's saying things that I think could be construed as self-harm.
Sarah was taken to a local hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. Meanwhile, Donnelly dove into the mountain of evidence. The scope of Sarah Cavanaugh's fraud was beyond what he could have imagined. Over 6 years, Sarah defrauded 10 different veterans charities. 10. She also stole federal benefits accepted donations from GoFundMe, and exploited 5 individuals, including Justin, her gym buddy Michelle, Sam, and Sam's mother. All told, she stole over $250,000 of cash and services. And that's just the wire fraud total, which doesn't even count the donations she took from friends in cash over the years. All of this while working as a licensed social worker at the VA. The feds would spend the next few months building their case against Sarah Cavanaugh.
Later that same day, after Sarah's psychiatric evaluation, she was cleared and released. Her wife, Nicole, was waiting for her at the hospital and drove her home. It's easy to forget that Sarah had a wife. This story is so twisted and complicated, but she did. They shared a home and a life together. And her wife, she thought she knew who Sarah was, until that day when the police searched their house. For Nicole, that was the moment of truth. So that night, when they finally returned home, Nicole had questions, and there would be a reckoning. Next time on Deep Cover.
Picked up the phone just to check my messages, and she said, "You need to come home, the FBI is here." That's when I knew. It was that fast. I had nothing until I had that.
When you live 2 separate lives for so long, it feels normal, right? I had to be someone else in front of other people when I was young and when I was a child, and that was normal.
Deep Cover, The Truth About Sarah, was produced by Amy Gaines McQuaid and Tali Emlin. Additional production support by Sonia Gerwit.
Our show is edited by Karen Shakurji. Our executive producer is Jacob Smith. Mastering by Jake Gorski.
Original scoring and our theme were composed by Luis Guerra. Our show art was designed by Sean Carney. Fact-checking by Annika Robbins.
Special thanks to Sarah Nix, Izzy Carter, Daphne Chen, Jake Flanagan, and Greta Cohn. Additional thanks to Vicky Merrick. I'm Jess McHugh.
And I'm Jake Halpern. Hey, it's Jake, and look, I got a little favor to ask. If you like the show, please just take 1 minute and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Honestly, it really helps new listeners find the show, which in turn helps us continue making these stories for you. Thanks a lot.